What is your unbelievable story that is 100% true? I told this story here before, but I'll tell it again. So, in wood shop, we had a table saw that had a surface stop, which means that if the sensor detects flesh touching the blade, it will instantly thrust a big block of hard plastic into the saw, instantly stopping the blade and pulling it down. Well, on the last day of our senior year, a friend of mine decided he was gonna dick slap the saw blade. The shop instructor left us alone to go to a teacher's meeting, since we were supposed to be the more responsible senior class, and we all huddled around the table saw and got the camera phone ready. He pulled his pants off, but kept his Vans on, and hopped up on top of the table, exposing his powder white, bare ass to the camera. Then he got into position, hovering his taint right above the saw, and holding his dick in one hand. I will never forget the sight of this dude's dick. It was garnished with a fuzzy layer of ginger pubes, starting from beneath the belly button to a sparse sprinkling on his pale purple ballsack. His dick was long enough for him to do some helicopter work for the camera, just to build up some suspense. I had never thought that penises could have freckles, but his dick honestly looked like Orphan Annie. The images burnt into my brain forever. Anyway, he was ready to go, so we turned the table saw on and watch it spin. I look into his eyes, and for the first time since he had this idea, I saw fear. But he was already too deep into quit, and we were hyping him up, chanting his name. He asks for a countdown, so we start from 5. He starts hyperventilating. As soon as we get to 2, he starts screaming and flings his dick like ducking Mjolnir into the saw. In a matter of milliseconds we hear the slight buzz of his meat coming into contact with the saw, or thud as the surface stop engaged down, pulled the blade down, and watch as he stumbles backward and falls off the table. We rush over to him and find him in a fetal position, gingerly holding onto his dick. He spreads his legs for the camera and reveals a thin red line about a ½ inch under the head and the slightest trickle of blood. The blade barely nicked the surface. His dick ducking survived. I can attest to the fact that surface stop works. He was a god to us that day, so the video got passed around the campus within a couple hours. This happened in 2nd period, and by 5th everyone had seen the video. He got called into the office by the end of the day. They couldn't exactly expel him, as it was the last day, but they did make him pay about $300 for a replacement surface stop, and he was not allowed to attend our graduation ceremony. Still a legend at the school. Oh, and by the way, this is the same high school that porn star Alexis Texas graduated from. Our school sure is special. I'm a Jeopardy champion who writes encyclopedia articles for fun, and one time I won the lottery, and one time I posted some crap on Reddit and Warner Brothers called me a week later and said here's a lot of money to make this into a movie. I saw a blind person leading a conga line of other blind people at an airport. There were 7 or 8 of them in total. The blind guy in the front had a white cane and everyone was wearing dark clothes and dark round glasses. Because of how the guy in front was zigzagging, it created a ripple effect throughout the line. Saw John Travolta once while on vacation. I was in a rainbow tank top and looked gay AF. He looked me up and down once and had a weird expression on his face. That's it though. Just had a celebrity think I look funny. When I was about 10, my brother and I were fishing. A bunny came along and was getting a drink just down from us. A huge catfish jumped up and pulled the bunny into the pond. My brother jumped in the pond and saved the bunny from the catfish. I had to take a lift from my work to a marijuana dispensary. The driver saw the building and asked me, is this a recreational dispensary? I said yes, and he ended up going in with me. I got 50% off for referring him to the store. Another time, a Lyft driver drove me home from the train station. I wanted to tip him with edibles. Turns out, he had weed in the bag and wanted to smoke some. I invited him over to smoke some weed and we did. After my parents got divorced, my mom and I moved to Canada. Prior to that, we had lived on an island where we knew pretty much everyone. The idea of stranger danger just wasn't a thing, because there really was no such thing as strangers. My mom went out of her way to find arrangements for me before and after school. She was working, so I walked to school with one neighbor kid, and then I went to the home of another neighbor kid after school. I was supposed to walk home with them, One day, instead of going directly to my neighbor's house after school, I ended up waiting with a classmate for her dad to come pick her up. I was a bit of a passive kid, and this girl had asked me to wait with her, so I did. My memory on why is a bit vague, but I do remember it was freezing. I was not used to Canadian winters, and we were just sitting on the steps outside of the school for what felt like hours. This is something that wouldn't happen now. I'm a teacher, and the idea of kids sitting outside on the steps after school all alone is kind of distressing. When my classmate's dad eventually came to pick her up, they just drove off, and I was alone. While obviously 6-year-olds don't have a good grasp of time, I think we must have waited for a long time, because I remember I couldn't get back into the school, and there weren't any other cars in the parking lot, so the teachers must have all left. So I just started walking home and crying because I was a scared little girl, and this car slowed down as it passed me, rolled down the window, and a balding white man said, "Hey, little girl, are you okay?" Apostrophe. No stranger danger. So I just told him no. I was scared and alone, and I wasn't sure I knew how to get to my house. He stopped the car, opened the passenger door, and told me to get in. My mom had made me memorize my address, so I told him my address and he drove me home. He just drove me home. When I got out of the car, I remember him saying something to the effect of "Don't get into cars with strangers," which made absolutely no impact on me because, well, like he had just driven me home. So no reason to fear there. When I got to my door, mom wasn't home yet, so I had to wait on the steps again. And when she got home, she was so mad at me for not going to my neighbor's house that I actually didn't even tell her about the man that drove me home. Didn't tell her for years, actually, and when I did, she didn't believe me. I lived in a second floor apartment where a kind of tough guy lived in the basement. One night I was wakened by loud knocking on the outside door downstairs. I noticed red flashing lights as I went down. A cop flashed his badge and said they were looking for an escaped convict from a local prison, and showed me a photo of one of the scariest dudes I've ever seen. After explaining that I knew nothing, I went back to bed. A few weeks later I saw my downstairs neighbor and brought up the convict thing. He said, "Yeah, that was my buddy. He was hiding in my ceiling, and they never found him." That's when I knew I wanted to find a new neighborhood. No one believes that I had 5 pints of Guinness with Brendan Fraser, the actor from The Mummy in Belfast. I didn't recognize him first with a baseball cap, but he actually struck the conversation first with me. I was only there for 1 beer at the pub. While waiting on my bus home, I had a lot of time to kill. Anyways, I had a few pints with him, and we had a great conversation with some people asking for his pic. He's a very down-to-earth guy. I don't consider it anything super interesting, but I've been met with a lot of doubt when I tell people about my chaotic high school years, and accused of fabricating a ridiculous sob story for attention. When TBH, I don't consider it a sob story, more frustrating and comedically ridiculous. In 9th grade I got arrested for uttering the word Columbine and sent to juvie for 2 weeks. I was a meek, nerdy, white passing but Arab mixed girl, and unlike Clock Kid, I didn't get mass media outrage. When I got out, my probation officer urged my mom to press charges on the school district since they had no zero tolerance policy, and this was the last incident in a long line of shitty things they did, including stunting my education immensely by sticking me in learning support despite qualifying for gifted in everything but math. After it requested smaller classes during 7th grade due to immense amounts of bullying and physical harassment, teachers turned a blind eye to it. We had been trying to work with the school board since I entered high school in order to find alternative placement for me due to severe PTSD anxiety that developed in my middle school years. And they ended up giving me more. My mom, who worked for an interfaith religious center, basically a bunch of white hippies and Wiccan moms, got a call from a guy asking about advertising his Zen Buddhist high school. The timing was uncannily perfect, and this is the key detail I get doubt about. But yes, it exists. Tinicum Art and Science, now known as the Lotus School of Liberal Arts. So I spent my teen years in this tiny school in rural PA, with meditation, obscure Korean martial arts, gym classes that consisted of forest adventures with a stereotypical goofy German man, Some very eclectic classes such as comparative religion, American modern women poets, a realistic sex ed, which was almost called Sex with Tina, but the teachers didn't want to catch flack from parents. I have a ton of silly stories, rather than your usual tales of petty high school drama and proms and whatever the hell. It wasn't all gold, though, because the school and teachers were amazing. But outside of academics, I also had to deal with my mom's mental illnesses spiraling and leading to some harsh abuse back home. And in another case of uncanny, this sounds like a plot to a dark humor fiction work. A month before my graduation, my mom died of heart disease with absolutely no warning, rendering me without a stable living situation during and in the subsequent years after HS. I kept in contact with my teachers and they were super helpful during those years. Also, my high school boyfriend lit himself on fire in accident and almost died, like a week after we got together. High school was a surreal, dark mess. Anyway, this is probably TL Doctor and not actually as interesting as some other posts here, but thanks to anyone who reads this post, lol. I fell asleep while riding a bicycle, too poor to have car, going to college, and also working part-time. On the ride back from a late night shift, I simply nodded out and crashed and burned. Stone cold sober. 2. I managed to get out of a jail cell and deportation from a third country by giving the local police station a large sum of money. I scored 100% on my driving test back when I was 16. Apparently all of my friends were shitty drivers because nobody could possibly fathom that it was possible to do that. One of my closest friends repeatedly failed her behind the wheel test. The most epic failure was when she hit a pedestrian. Love her to bits, but she can't drive for shit. I got upgraded to a penthouse room from a standard room at the Bellagio for free, without having to ask for it. When I was 7, I was hitting the ground with a stick, angered a hornet's nest, and got stung by 11 of them. We lived in a wooded area and our driveway was long. I was running and screaming when I was getting stung. My grandfather ran to me and grabbed me, then dashed for the house. My grandfather got stung twice on the same spot behind his ear. Slept with a celebrity. We were in high school, long before he hit Hollywood. As far as I know, he's still in the closet too. And only a few of us from our school know he took it up the back door. Edit. No, I will not say who on Reddit. As a gay person, it is against my values to out somebody, regardless of if people believe it or not. I was a US Marine in Pakistan when Bin Laden was assassinated. I posted this once and everyone downvoted me and said r/that happened. My dad was an EMT in the 80s and usually worked in the Malibu Canyon area. He went to Madonna's house once after one of her alleged domestic incidents with Sean Penn. She denied it and said she fell off a bike. My high school GF and I were broken up/fighting when a random who lived 5 hours away replied to a tweet I made about needing someone to watch Harry Potter with. This obviously sets off a shitstorm because it's high school, so my GF and her friends start messaging this girl, we'll call her Sarah, telling her she's a whore. Typical stuff. Eventually it all calms down. I unfollow Sarah and continue dating this girl. Fast forward 18 months. GF and I are long broken up, and I see Sarah has liked one of my tweets. First time I'd thought of her since the incident, so I was a little surprised to see her there. But follow back and message her playing dumb about "Oh, when did I unfollow you?" Sarah isn't buying it and says, "Oh, right around your psycho ex called me a whore." Story checks out. But then Sarah goes, "Well, at least she was your ex. But you guys went to that Taylor Swift concert together, so IDK." Which was kind of weird that she remembered, but I had been very excited about that concert. My guilty pleasure. Red torso, I'm not ashamed, so I just shrugged it off thinking I'd probably tweeted about it 1,000 times. Then she says, "Yeah, you guys sat beside me." Wait, what? Like in the same section? No, I sat beside this girl who 6 months earlier had been called a whore by the girl on the other side of me for 2 hours and had absolutely no idea. We've compared pictures, ticket stubs, everything, of the 2 shows in that city of hers on that tour in a stadium that holds 45k people. We got seats right beside each other. Sarah and I are friends now and talk frequently, and it just blows my mind every time I think about how we got here. Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.